a true reform agenda. You've got to start with the leadership of the Department of Justice itself. We need an attorney general who actually will adhere to the rule of law and demonstrate that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to the people to rebuild that. And then you'll need, persons at all levels of the justice system to do what is right and to communicate with the people and show that this is happening. Congress will have a role as well.
Well, the domino effect continues from yesterday's verdict, the conviction of Donald Trump on 34 felony counts. One major concern is that the American people see a two-tiered justice system. Speaker Mike Johnson was asked specifically about that over on Salem News Channel's This Week on the Hill. Take a look at what he had to say.
Let me ask you about that, Speaker Johnson, in terms of how do you restore confidence once it's lost?
Well, you have to rebuild the trust and the faith of the people, and that's a series of actions to do so. And it begins as soon as the new administration takes office. It begins early next year with a change in leadership. And we've mentioned, I believe we're going to have control of the White House and the Senate and the House. And what we'll need to do is a true reform agenda. You've got to start with the leadership of the Department of Justice itself. We need an attorney general who actually will adhere to the rule of law and demonstrate that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to the people to rebuild that. And then you'll need, persons at all levels of the justice system to do what is right and to communicate with the people and show that this is happening. Congress will have a role as well. We have an oversight responsibility, of course, over these agencies. And when we're in charge, we'll be able to lay out very clearly for the people what's being done and why they can trust the system again. We have to restore the idea that there is equal justice under the law. There are not two-tiered systems that run in this country. And I just think it's critically important, and it can't begin soon enough.
Elaine, this is critically important, as the speaker just said, because this isn't just about Donald Trump. Americans are now looking at this, and they see a two-tiered system. What do you think is the step forward? Do you agree with what Speaker Johnson has laid out?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we look at how do we restore the faith in the legal system. This verdict, I believe, shattered Americans' faith in the rule of law and our judicial system. I hope that as this case makes it to the New York Appellate Court, that cooler heads prevail. We tend to see more reasonable things happen at the appellate level. So I hope that does happen. I am willing to make a bet, though, that if Trump had used funds from his campaign to pay this expense, when the DOJ looked at this 7 years ago, they would have prosecuted him for exactly what Alvin Bragg prosecuted him for, using the funds as a personal expense and using personal funds. So I think, unfortunately, most Americans probably see this as he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't, because they were going to get him.
I think you're right. If you look at the law, in fact, John Edwards was prosecuted for this. The jury acquitted him for that. And Robert Charles. Hillary Clinton was fined by the FEC for using over $100,000 for what became the Steele dossier, which was done through her campaign. This does feel like they just decided we got to find some law that we can use against Donald Trump, and they're going to use it. And that's third world stuff. How do we walk back from this?
You're right, Frank. You're right, Larry. It really was. It is a third world way to look at the rule of law. It's a fundamental breakdown of the rule of law. We had effectively as a phony trial that produced a phony conviction. And I think the bigger implications go, as already discussed, beyond Trump. What you're looking at is a breakdown in trust on the part of the American people in what their judicial system represents. I think if you look at Democrats right now, there's a kind of a fear and a complicity associated with their silence. They don't want to step out of line, and they kind of think right now that the ends are going to justify the means. I think on the Republican side, although I love what Johnson said, I think there's kind of a feeling right now of powerlessness, waiting for the appeal to happen, trying to see how fast it can happen with was sentencing set just before the Republican convention. You mentioned third world stuff, Larry, and having seen all this develop as we all have, and having run oversight for 5 years and having been a litigator myself, I really think it's jarring. It's jarring to the average American. And if you think about the implications, it opens the door to judicial abuse across the country. It opens the door to sort of an open-ended prosecutorial misconduct new standard where you can do these things and not be held accountable. It really, at the state level as well as at the federal level, opens the door to election interference without any checks and balances. And to me, it feels a lot like, and to borrow a little bit back on the law, it feels like a resurrection of the Plessy v. Ferguson case from 1898. That was a case that said everything is okay as long as it's separate but equal. Blacks can be treated differently because they're Black. And right now what you're hearing is Republicans can be treated differently because they're Republican. It makes an abomination of constitutional law. And I really do hope, as Elaine mentioned, that what we will see is either the New York Appellate Court, which is actually the highest appeals court, or the U.S. Supreme Court will intervene quickly and say, no, we don't conduct judicial process this way. We don't keep information out that is relevant and should be considered evidence. We don't include information which is prejudicial. We don't make rulings that are patently biased. And we do not allow a prosecutor to create out of whole cloth a felony charge.
Yeah. Elaine, let me follow up on something that Robert just laid out there, where, many Republicans and conservatives are going to look at what Speaker Johnson just said and said, okay, that's fine, but that's not good enough. I mean, they're saying, okay, fine, you crossed that Rubicon. It's time now for Republican DAs or attorney generals in red cities or states to go after Hillary Clinton, or to Barack Obama for the abuses of the FISA warrant system during the Russian collusion investigation, or for that matter, Hunter Biden, who we have documented evidence utilized prostitutes and did drug deals and other crimes that he is not facing a courtroom for. Are they wrong for wanting fire to be fought with fire?
Look, I was always raised two wrongs don't make a right. And I still believe that we have to get back to governing. We have to get back to fairness, and we have to get away from people thinking that there's a two-tiered justice system. We are literally seeing the politicization of regulatory agencies, DAs across the country, the DOJ. People don't trust the FBI anymore. I mean, there is a continuous theme here that has made people not trust government agencies. And I think regardless of what party is in the White House, and regardless of what party you support, you should want to support bringing back the rule of law and bringing trust to our government.
Yeah, Robert, the speaker is sort of in he's in a tough spot if he's wanting to act responsibly and instill this sense of fair play with the American people and let them know that they can still trust their government. Yet at the same time, since this was such a highly political move by the Democrats, he is being called to fight fire with fire, as I said, and be just as political until there's some kind of détente. Can Republicans just listen to their better angels and say, no, we're above that? Or do they need to play hardball?
I think you can play hardball, honestly, Larry, without becoming unethical or participating in prosecutorial misconduct of the kind that we just have witnessed. I think I would look back at this, and I guess I take a slightly different view in that I think this is a tipping point. I really think this is an inflection point in the American perceptions of their own justice system, and it needs to be remedied. I'm really glad to hear Johnson's optimism about how, and in fact, what he said was exactly right. I mean, I conducted oversight of the Justice Department for 5 years, ran the Waco hearings and a bunch of other questions about FBI, DOJ, election interference back in the 90s. And I will tell you that restoration of confidence in the system is critical. But I see this a little bit differently. I see it almost like a crack in the Hoover Dam, or by coincidence, today is the 135th anniversary exactly, May 31 of 1898, when the Johnstone Dam burst and killed thousands. And the reality is this is a potential dam burst where you change the whole perception nationally of what we should be expecting of our judicial system. And again, having traveled the world, this is the way justice is dispensed, with pure politics and no reference to an unmovable standard in places like Bolivia and Laos and the former Soviet Union and currently in China. We do not want that to become our norm. And I think we have to aggressively speak. I would like to see some Democrats speak up and aggressively say, no, this is not how we manage the separation of powers, the fair administration of justice, and the impartial implementation of the United States Constitution, Fifth Amendment and 14th Amendment, due process, equal protection. We're in a troubled spot, Larry.
Yeah, and there's a reason why this sort of thing has never been done before, either to a presidential candidate or a former president. And certainly I would think, and I'll let my word be the last word, I would think that if you're going to break that precedent and go after a presidential candidate or a former president on a felony charge, it shouldn't be some novel, new, sort of invented, creative, nuanced way to apply the law. It should be kind of a slam dunk without any doubt, because there's a lot of doubt here. And that is an unsteady platform for the American people to have to stand on.